Okay, so the biggest thing we're doing the inequalities, I've got this in the top in the box up here, is if you have, and again, this is something that we talked about earlier, we're just going back and reviewing. When you're graphing, because this is the big thing that we're doing for this part, with these systems of inequalities, everything is graphing. If you have less than, equal to, or greater than, equal to, when you're doing this one, this is where you're going to have a solid line. If you have less than or greater than, that's where we have a dash line. And so after the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna draw the lines. After we draw the lines, this is where we get to shade based on whether it's y less than or y greater than. If it's y greater or y greater than or equal to, if it's either one of these two, this is where we're gonna shade up. And if it's y less than or y less than or equal to, we're gonna shade down. Okay, so that's, and again, I know we talked about it a little while back. We're just going back and make sure everybody's got it, because that's the two things we have to do when we're going through this one. The difference is we were only doing one line at a time. Now we're doing two lines, and we're just going to walk you through that process here. So when we're doing the systems, here's our system that we have with these two problems. And if they're not in y equals mx plus b form, we're going to have to rewrite them in y equals mx plus b form. This one on bottom is good. So if you want to, we'll go ahead and do this one. We're going to do this one in red just because, just kind of color coordinate. It's y greater than negative x minus 1. So when we graph this one, our b value is at negative 1. So we're going to start at negative 1 on the y-axis. Our m in this case is also negative 1. And when we're doing these, again, slope has to be a fraction. If it's not a fraction, just put it over 1. So to get the next point, we're going down 1 over 1 to get the next point here. Now, if we need to do it again, we could go down 1 over 1 here. And this is one where, again, if we're on Math Excel, once you connect the 2 points, it's going to draw the line for you. We're good to go. For me, I'm going to make sure it's just straight so that it looks like it should when we go through these. That would be what we're looking at here. All right, the other thing is, it's y greater, so we're going to shade up. And because it's greater, that means it's also going to be a dashed line. So when we draw this line, it's going to be a dashed line. So we're going to, and we always do this first. You figure out if it's solid or dashed, so we'll draw that line first. After you've got the line drawn, then use the y greater, this part, to figure out whether we're going to shade up or down. For this one, it's y greater, so we're going to shade on the upside. We'll just lightly shade that in because that's not going to be, because when we lightly shade it in, it's a little different doing it by hand than doing it on Math Excel. For doing it by hand, we shade this one in, and then we'll shade the blue line in. We'll do this one in blue. And then we'll use those two things to get the answers for what we need. All right, so for this one, we've got to get it in y equals mx plus b form. So first thing we're going to have to do is, got to get the y by itself, so we're going to get rid of the x, so we're going to subtract x. So if we subtract x from both sides, we've got 2y is less than or equal to negative x plus 4. Okay, and then one last thing, divide everything by 2. So that's y less than or equal to negative x over 2 plus 2. So we've got everything we need. We got our b values at positive 2. And our m value would be negative. Technically, that's 1 in front of the x, so that would be negative 1 over 2. Okay, so we're going to start at positive 2. We're going to go down 1 over 2 to get to the next point. So down 1 over 2. Again, just to make sure I got a nice straight line, we'll graph this. Down 1 over 2 to get the next point over here. All right. So once you've got your slope and your y-intercept going, you've got 2 or 3 dots. Now we go back and see, all right, do we need a solid or a dashed line? Well, in that case, it's going to be solid. So we go ahead and graph it and make it solid. This one was y less than. So if it's less than, we're going to shade down. So that's everything in this direction. Okay. Now, and test-wise, if we were doing a test, paper, pencil, here's what I would have you do. Everybody would have a highlighter. And once we graph these two things, the red and the blue is everything in the middle. And the difference is online, we're doing this on Math Excel, this is where you would drop in that paint bucket. And you put the paint bucket right here, and it will fill in everything for you between these two lines. Okay. And it's almost one of those that you almost have to kind of do that for me anyway. If I don't want to mess things up, if I'm doing this on Math Excel, I'm almost going to go ahead and have a graph paper out and draw this thing just to make sure I've got it. So when I go back and graph it, I'll know exactly what it is I'm going to do. Because sometimes I'm good drawing the lines. Where I mess up sometimes is when I shade this thing is if I'm shading it in the right place or not. So for me, it helps me to do this one by hand just so I know which part I've got to shade.
Teachers, please pardon the interruption. At this time, release all 10th grade boys to the cafeteria for registration. 10th grade boys to the cafeteria for registration. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is everybody okay with that one? Everybody okay with what we did there? Okay. All right. Let's get a couple more here. Let's see what we can do. All right. So on the one below it, same thing. The line on the bottom is already in y equals mx plus b form, so we can go ahead and graph this one. Our b value is at -1. Our m would be at -3. But again, it's got to be a fraction for your slope, so go ahead and make it -3 over 1. So we're going to begin at -1, and then we're going to move down 3 over 1 to get to the next point. 1, 2, 3, 1. So that's got you go in this direction. And remember, if you need to go in the opposite direction, you can go up 3 and left 1. So go up 1, 2, 3, and left 1 to get the next point there. Okay, so for this one, and we're getting ready to graph it. It's got the line underneath it, so it will be a solid line. And it's y greater, so then we're going to shade up. All right, solid line. We're going to shade on the upside, so that's everything up here. Okay, so the top equation was not in y equals mx plus b form, so we got to rewrite it in y equals mx plus b form. We'll do that over here. So we got x minus y is greater than -2. We got to get the x by itself, so we're going to subtract x from both sides. So now we got -y is greater than -x minus 2. Okay, and pick this one for a reason, because here's the catch on this one. We're going to take this equation, we're going to divide it by -1 to get the y by itself. But remember, if we divide this thing by a negative to make that a positive and you change this sign, you've also got to change that sign. Those two negatives makes that a positive, and those two negatives makes that a positive. So if you divide by a negative number that's with the y, you've got to change all these signs, but you're also going to change your less than or greater than sign. And that's only if the y is negative. If the y is positive, like it was back up here, we divided by a +2, we didn't have to change the sign. But if the number with the y is negative, then you're going to have to change this sign from being greater to less than. Or if it was less than, you change it to greater than. All right, so now we got what we need. Our b value is 2. Our m value is 1, which again is really 1 over 1. We're doing slope. And based on the y less than, that means it's going to be a dashed line. And it's y less than, so we're going to have to shade down. All right, so we're going to begin at positive 2. Right there. Our slope is 1 over 1, so we're going up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And again, that's a dashed line, so when we draw it, got to make it dashed. All right, so we dashed the line, and we got a shade on the upside, so that's everything over here. Okay, now, and again, Math Excel, you won't draw this blue area here, you won't draw the red area here. The only thing you would actually do on Math Excel is you would take the paint bucket and you would paint in this little corner right here. Get what we need. Okay. But again, for me, it helps me to do this because then I know which part I got to graph and shade in. Because a lot of times when people do this, that's usually the biggest thing they miss is which corner they've got to shade in because they'll try to do everything online and not actually draw it out first. Where if you draw it out first, it's a little bit easier to kind of go back and check it and see what it looks like. Okay. Everybody good? Everybody? Sure.
So, knowing me, I probably should the one straight next to
Yeah.
Yeah, that one would that one work too, or
No, it's just that one little corner right there. So, and basically what it comes down to with Math Excel is that you've got like one of 4 spots usually, and you just got to figure out which of the 4 spots, and then you hit they have that paint bucket, that looks like that where it shows the paint coming out of it, and you just basically click one of those 4 spots there. And that's why I was saying it's almost good to do it by hand, and that way when you do it by hand, like this one we had the blue that was up here, and we had the red that was over here. Well, then you can see where the red and the blue overlap, and that lets you know that it had to be that little spot right there. So that's where I wish I had like a yellow and blue, and we can graph them and make it green. But it doesn't ever work that way when we do it. So. All right, so let's show you at least one more on the back because we got to show you one that we were doing Monday. Yeah. Because this has got a couple of graphs on it from what we're doing Monday with the absolute value stuff. I don't think there's an x squared on this one. Everything I picked in this case was just absolute value, so this will kind of help us out. The good thing with this one is we don't have to rewrite either one of these graphs because on the graph on top, this one's good. It's already in y equals mx plus b form, so your b value is 2, and your m is negative 1/2. It's y less than or equal to, so it's a solid line. And because it's y less than, we got to shade down. All right, so we're going to begin at 2 on the y-axis. So that puts us right there. The m is negative 1/2, so we're going down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. Going to go one more time, we go down 1 over 2. All right, solid line. One there. And again, we're going to shade down, so it's everything kind of over in this area. All right, the other one, the bottom line, this is where we're going to have to add in what we did earlier in the week. So if you haven't done that homework yet, that's why we're going to take some time today to go back and make sure we got it because try to get through this one pretty quick so we got some extra time to let y'all do some homework here. It's y greater than absolute value of 2 times x plus 1. And what you've got to remember is if we're doing this one, that absolute value means it's going to be a V-shaped graph. And normally it would start at 0, 0, and it would go off in a V shape like this. But again, we got to move it because this 1 on the inside. We're just going to forget about the greater than, less than part for a minute. Is that if it's absolute value, it's got to be a V-shaped graph. The 1 on the inside means we're going to move it one space, not to the right, but actually one space to the left. So we're going to go opposite direction. And then the 2, this is kind of like the slope. It's not really slope, but it's kind of like slope. So this is a 2, so really it's like 2 over 1. Okay, so we're going to take the V shape that was going to be at 0, 0, but now we're going to move it one space to the left. So now we're going to start it here. And to get the points, here's where we're going to use our kind of slope. To get the next point on the V-shaped graph, we're going to go up 2 and over 1 and put it there. If you go up 2 and over 1 and put it there, that would get you a V shape that's going this way. This one is going to be a dash line, right? Okay, and then that's half of the V. That's this half of the V. To get the other half of the V, we're still going to do 2 over 1, so we're going to go up 2, but now we're going to go 1 this direction. Up 2 and over 1 to the left, up 2 and over 1 to the left, and that gets the other half of the V that would be over here. Okay, so this was y greater, so it's a dash line. And again, because it's y greater, that means we've got to shade up. And somebody will go, well, how do I know which way's up? Well, you put your pen on the line and you draw an arrow in the up direction. Doesn't matter if you're over here, doesn't matter if you're over here. If you draw up from any of these points, that means you're staying basically inside this V. Okay, now, and there's not a big overlap. Not much at all. The only little piece, little chunk of the answer is this little corner right in there. And that would be the answer for what we're going to do. So they go, that's not a lot. No, it's not a lot, but sometimes you don't get much of an answer that would be that. There might actually be a trick question that pops up occasionally on some of these graphs where it may be that you may, before I do that, everybody okay with that one? Everybody all right with where the V shape came from? And I'll show you this one. You don't have to write this down, but sometimes you may graph a line and you may shade one this way. And you might graph another line and you might shade it this way. Well, if you graph it and there's no common area between the two, if you did one like this, that would just be no solution. So occasionally they may give you a multiple choice part where, again, that's one where you kind of do it by hand, because if you do it by hand and you go, well, there's no overlap, then there's just no solution there. Doesn't happen a lot, but every now and again they'll sneak one in on you just to kind of see what's happening there. All right, one more, and then we're done. This one will take just a few minutes to get this one. I want to show you this one as well. All right, so we'll do this one. Let me get this out of the way. Okay, so this one's good to go. So let's take this one and start graphing it. For the 1 on the inside, again, that means we're going to go one space opposite direction, left to right. So we're going to go one space to the left. The 3 that's on the outside, that's how much we move it up or down. Positive, we go up. Negative, we go down. So we're going to take the V shape we've got. We're going to move it one space to the left, 3 spaces up. And then this -4 in front, again, it's not really slope. So I like to call it the kind of slope. And you won't find that in any math book. That's a my thing. It's kind of like slope. So we got to make it a fraction, so it's -4 over 1. So the V shape that was going to be at 0, 0, well, now we're going to move it one space to the left and then 3 spaces up. 1, 2, 3. So that's going to put it right there. And to get the points on the V, from once we get this point that's in the middle right here, we're going to go down 4. Now actually it's negative, so we're going this way. So we're going down. So we're going to go down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1 to get that point. 1, 2, 3, 4 to get that point. And then that's this side of the V. To get the other side of the V, we're going to go down 4, but over 1 to the left. down 4 over 1 to the left. All right, so y greater, it's dashed. It's y greater, so we're going to have to shade up. So we're going to dash it. Okay, and we're going to shade up, which means, again, you start anywhere on the line and you start shading the upside. That's everything on this side. So that's everything basically on the outside of the V. So that's a big area we're shading in. Okay, so that's the first line we had to graph. Second line, this is going to be really, well, hopefully really easy. It's y less than or equal to 2. Only one letter, right? So that means we're only going one direction. So this one's either going to be horizontal or it's going to be vertical. We got to figure out which one it is. So if we go to 2, we know we got to go to 2 on the y-axis. So that's right here. If you go up and down, now you're changing the y value. Now this would be at 3 or 4 or 5 if we go up and down. So you can't go up and down. You're going to have to go side to side. But that one's also going to be, that's a solid line. Okay, it's y less than, so we're going to shade down. So that's everything going in this direction. All right, and this one's actually got a two-part answer because the V kind of cut it off in the middle. There's only the blue that's in the middle, so it's going to be like a two-part answer. You got this chunk over here, but then you've also got this chunk over here. Okay. Looks like a bad pair of 80s sunglasses. Okay, so it's doing the same things we've been doing. It's just now we're doing two graphs at one time. That before, we just drew the one line and we would shade it up or down, and that was it. Now you're going to do the two lines, and what we've got to do is, again, you've got to think about two colors. All right, where do both colors overlap? And wherever both colors overlap, we got to shade in. Most of the time, it's one spot. This one was one where we had two spots because we had a little bit over here and we had a little bit over here as well. This V shape in the middle, we kind of have that gap in the middle that kind of knocked this thing out.